Hi, everyone. My name is Isa Chu. I'm the Philanthropy Associate here at TPERC. Thank you so much for joining our Patient Circle. Today, we are going to have a wonderful presentation by Beth, Carly, and Rebecca, who should be joining the call soon. And I'll let Beth and Carly take it away by introducing themselves.
Hi. So we're just going to do a quick introduction so that you kind of know where we're at in, our experience with TIP. So I have a daughter who is now 19 years old, and she was in treatment between the ages of 15 and 17, and she treated anaphylaxis to cashews and pistachios, and then a number of other nuts and other foods in like the sensitive column. And we travel from Wisconsin back and forth to the Long Beach office. And that's kind of what I'm about. She is now a first year college student living about 3.5 hours away from home, in remission for over 2 years now. So, Carly, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Carly. My daughter Georgia started TIP when she was 19 months old. She graduated a month ago this week, and she is now about 5.5. She treated anaphylactic allergies to dairy, egg, peanut, fish, mustard, a bunch of sensitized tree nuts, and other seeds also.
And Rebecca, I think she's also on the call right now.
Yes, hi.
I think see and hear you.
Okay, good. My name is Rebecca. My son started treatment when he was 8 to tree nuts, peanuts, legumes, and seeds. And we have been in remission now for 2 years, and we come from Canada.
Nice. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start the slide.
So we wanted to start talking about our travel experiences. Like logistically, like I said, we started when my tip daughter was 19 months old and her older sister had just turned 4. So my kids grew up a lot and changed a lot while we were traveling to the institute. Because my kids were so young and because we flew in from the Eastern time zone, um, in a spot where we get a lot of snow unexpectedly sometimes, we usually would fly in the day before the appointments, especially if it was winter and spring, because we didn't want to be stuck with a canceled flight. In the summer and sometimes the fall, we would try to fly in really early the day of her appointment, and then we would fly out the next day all the time. Just because she was so young, it was too hard to fly out the same day as our appointments. We didn't try to adjust them at all to California time. We just stayed on Eastern time and kept them on their normal schedules so that they would have no jet lag. We flew from Detroit. It's our closest airport. We tried to do direct either to SNA or LAX, just because it was easier. The one time that we did a layover to try and fly into Long Beach Airport, we ended up delayed both in and out. So it just was too hard, especially with young kids. One tip we did find was that for us, especially, it was often cheaper if we flew into SNA and out of LAX. So we always priced it out all 3 ways. And then if you book the trip, keep checking because you can rebook at a cheaper price for a flight credit if you can get it cheaper in the future. In terms of hotels, my favorite to stay in at the beginning was the Homewood Suites Long Beach. It had a full kitchen. It had a laundry room on the first floor. It was walking distance to a Whole Foods and a Starbucks, and a really short drive to Noblebird, which is a allergy-friendly restaurant. When we got a little bit further along in the program and we didn't need a full kitchen, we stayed at the Hyatt Regency Huntington Beach, which has a partnership with the Institute. And Chef Manny there is wonderful. My kids had more options to eat there than they did when we went to Disneyland. It had a fun pool. It was on the beach. There was just lots to do at the hotel, and you can get a microwave in your room if you're a patient at the clinic. And then our third favorite hotel to stay at was the Home 2 Suites in Anaheim. It also is a really close walk to the Disneyland hotels, which have safe foods for the kids. It had a great splash pad and a full kitchen minus an oven or stove, but you could get a griddle from the front desk. We were lucky that through my employer, we could get discounts at Alamo for rental cars. So that's what we used exclusively for our rental cars. And then I'm always asked like what kind of foods we brought because it was a 5 hour flight for my kids. So we would kind of bring our own like Lunchables kind of foods on the flight. We'd bring the frozen sunbutters and jellies that you can find at Target or Whole Foods. And we'd always bring a pack of Abe's muffins for breakfast on the plane. And as we kind of went along, I had a packing list that I put on my phone and saved it in the notes as a checklist. And that way, before every trip, I could go through the note and make sure that I had all of the stuff that I needed, which was really important to small kids.
Hi. Okay, so a little bit about my travel experience. We fly from Milwaukee, which is in Wisconsin, and we have always flown into Long Beach Airport. My daughter and I just really love the airport. Again, coming from cold weather, they have an outdoor space where you can sit and get fresh air, which is just so nice, especially in the winter when we do not get any outside time at home. So that's always been nice. And unfortunately, though, there is no direct flight for us on Southwest from Milwaukee to Long Beach. And it worked out fine for us. We would either have a layover, usually in Denver, Las Vegas, or Phoenix. And you get to know the airports and know, it really becomes a routine. And we do have an option to drive to one of the Chicago airports, but that is not even a direct flight from Midway to Long Beach either on Southwest. So it just wasn't really beneficial for us to go anywhere other than our home airport. And one of the things that I do on Southwest all the time, and I actually just rebooked my flight yesterday for our upcoming remission visit, which we're coming back out to the clinic in May. And I just rechecked our flights and I just saved a whole bunch more points again. For our flight heading out there. So I always check the Southwest every couple weeks even, just to see if the flight has gone cheaper. Southwest makes it so easy to do it online. And I always purchase my flights with points. So it's super easy and the points just come right back to my account and that's it. If you pay with cash, like a credit card or something for your flight, it's a little different depending on which fare you get. But for points, it's super easy to change that and adjust it. We did fly into SNA one time just because we were going to stay in that part of the city during that trip out there. But it's usually more expensive for us to fly into SNA, and the Long Beach airport is just so small. It's so easy to walk across the street and get your car rental, and it's just really convenient. So we just tend to always look there, and I don't even look at other airports anymore. We don't ever check a bag when we go out, so it's super fast on and off the plane for us. We usually just have our carry-on suitcase and a backpack, and that's it. And so that just makes it really convenient and quick for us. The car rentals, we do always rent a car when we come to Long Beach, and I usually do some price comparison. Typically for us, it's cheapest if I go with either Costco Travel or the Enterprise with the discount code through the clinic, and that's usually what my best price is. But I also check back to see what the rate is for car rentals because sometimes it goes down. It doesn't happen as much anymore as it did when we were in treatment closer to, like 2021 when people weren't traveling as much. I could save like $50 if I rebooked it sometimes. That doesn't really happen that much anymore, but I still do check just in case. And then for hotels, in the beginning of treatment, we used to stay at a different hotel every time just so we could explore around that area. And we have come to learn that we like staying close to the airport, which is also close to the clinic, because then we have a quick commute for her appointments and we don't have to worry about how long is it going to take us to get there with traffic. One time we stayed in Huntington Beach, one time we stayed in Newport Beach, and the travel back and forth to the clinic is just a little more unpredictable with the traffic. And so we found that we would rather travel to do our exploring and stay close to the clinic to have easy access back and forth for our appointments. And we do prefer to stay at Staybridge Suites, Long Beach. They do have a kitchen and a fridge and a freezer, which is nice. And we have also stayed in Long Beach Marriott. A lot of times that one seems to be more expensive, so we really just try to stay at whatever is the most reasonable priced for the time that we're going out there. And with a teenager, we would stay the least possible. When she had 2 days of appointments, we used to fly in that morning, have a late first day of appointments, and then we would have the very first appointment the next morning, and we would fly back home at like 4:30 in the evening. We wouldn't get home till like 2 in the morning. I wouldn't be able to do that with a younger kid, but with a teenager, it worked fine. And then once we changed to 1 day appointments, we always fly in the day before. And then we would have her appointment and fly home that same evening. It's what worked for us with all the, when we first started traveling, it was more in like 2021, and we didn't have as many delays, I feel like, as we do now. So we give ourselves a little bit of extra time and always travel the day before for us. And then sometimes when I don't stay in a place that has a fridge or a freezer, I always ask the hotel to freeze my ice pack for our return flight. And I always just tell them it's for my daughter's medications. And I have done this whether I'm flying or I'm just traveling for a dance competition for her when she was in high school. And we have stayed in so many different hotels, and they usually always are able to accommodate us. There was only one time that we stayed someplace, and it was actually in Orlando for a dance competition that they had nowhere to put the ice pack. But a lot of people don't realize that you can ask the front desk, and they usually can accommodate you. And it's super helpful for on the travel home. And that's about it.
Sorry, Rebecca.
Hi, yeah, sorry, I'm not knowing if it's showing. Okay. We fly internationally into LAX. We come from Winnipeg, Manitoba, and currently right now we have a direct flight. Before that, we would take a flight across the border. So we go into Fargo. We pretty much price out what is cheaper. So we usually fly either WestJet or with Allegiant, anything that would get us into LAX. Any other airport was expensive for us. So that was what we preferred. And you get to know the airport, and it's always the exact same gate you fly into. So it was pretty easy. And then for car rentals, we would book through Expedia to look for the cheapest price. We would either end up with either Fox or Enterprise based on the prices and their times. Like Midway is only open for certain times of the day, and it would interfere with our flights when you'd be able to return a car or pick it up. So it was something to look into. And they also had shuttles from the airport to their car rental agencies. For hotels, we bounced a lot in the beginning till we found something we felt comfortable with. We preferred staying in business areas as we felt it was quieter and safer, not a lot of action going on. So we used a lot of points to stay in Marriott and also Hyatt's, but mostly Marriott Inns. And the Residence Inn we liked because they had a full kitchen. So that was really important in the beginning when we needed to have access to a kitchen for a couple of days that we would stay there. Internationally, they like booking you for multiple day appointments. So then it's good to stay somewhere for that. And for traveling back and forth to the airport, we felt, and also to the clinic, we felt that Cypress, Anaheim, and La Miranda was close enough that it wasn't too much traffic driving. We felt it was easier than staying in Long Beach where there's so many traffic lights to go through. For travel advice internationally, I would say to avoid traveling at US holidays at all costs. You can easily get bumped off a flight, and flights can get canceled, and a lot of chaos can happen during that time. And for sure to book a day before to arrive at the airport or to arrive in Cali because of any traffic and airline issues that you can happen. We've had many times where we've barely made our flight, and if you lose that internationally, you lose your appointment. It's very complicated. So always try to arrive a day before your appointment. And another thing to consider is to book your appointment 3 to 7 days after they tell you you can come back to the appointment, to give yourself some time in case something happens at home or something happens with flights and there's a delay in your dosing schedule, so that you are okay on schedule when you hit your appointment. And also arrange with an airline any areas that you need to for accommodating allergies, like a nut-free zone or pet-free zone, or if you can wipe down your space your child will sit before boarding. It also helps because then you can get in with your carry-on, which you would want to bring with nuts across. So then you can easily put that in the overhead bins a lot faster than if you didn't book in earlier. That's it for me.
Our next few slides are kind of the travel essentials that we found really helpful for us when we were traveling back and forth. For us, it was necessary to have a travel cooler backpack at the beginning, just because we had basically no safe foods that we were able to get from the time we left our house at 5 a.m. to the time that we would arrive at the hotel in California, which was usually around 7 o'clock p.m. our time. And with that, a quality ice pack, like a Yeti brand ice pack. And as like Beth was saying, we would either freeze it in our hotel room if we had a freezer, or we would have the front desk freeze it for us for the return flight home. In terms of entertainment, the kids' Kindle Fire from Amazon was a lifesaver for us on our long flights for both my kids. We got travel Bluetooth headphones for them that look like kitty cats, and they love them. Reusable stickers were great when my tip daughter was still really, really little. She loved playing with those on the plane. And just notebooks and crayons. You can often find a lot of stuff at the dollar store and the dollar section at Target that's perfect for travel. Just like little travel clipboards with paper and crayons, or the Imagine Ink books that have the markers that are kind of like invisible and they only color on the parts of the paper that they're supposed to. Those were great for the plane. And then fidget toys, especially the one here on the bottom left picture, was a huge hit for my kids on plane. It would entertain them for a long time. We also started off when we traveled, we needed 2 travel car seats for my kids. So we got the Costco Sonera car seats, which were recommended in some of the travel groups I followed on Facebook. They're really lightweight, they're easy to install. And we got a protective travel bag for them on Amazon. Eventually, my older daughter got old enough where she could move to a booster seat. So we got the MyFold booster seat, which is also really compact and it folds up small. Normally, we would gate check the seats on our way to California, just because if they got lost or put on the wrong flight, which did happen to us one time on the way home, we wouldn't be stuck with nothing when we got to California. And then we would just regular check them on the way home because we had our normal car seats in the car at the airport. Going through toilet training with kids in the program was really interesting with travel too. We bought foldable potty seats that we could wipe off real easy and stick in my purse for the plane. And then Post-it notes, because we found out that our kids were scared of the flushing or the automatic flushing toilets at the airport. So if you cover up the sensor with a Post-it note, then it won't auto flush on them. So it was a much easier travel experience for them. At the beginning, my daughter needed a travel plaque and play, so we got the Guava Lotus. It was really small when it folded up, so it could fit in our suitcase, so we wouldn't have to bring a separate pack and play bag like some of the Graco models are bigger. When she got older, we got these inflatable bed rails that we've linked on this slide that you can just blow up and then stick them under the sheet, and they keep the kids from falling out of the bed. And then another good one we got were these stick-on placemats, so they have like a tape adhesive on them, and we could use them on the trays on the plane so that they would have like a clean space for them to snack on, or just to play on, and in the room and as restaurants as well. And then I got at the beginning of traveling a fold-up toiletries bag with a hanger, and I just kept a pack with like, children's Tylenol, children's Motrin, or Benadryl, all of the things that you could think of that we might need, both for the kids and for us. And I just kept it in the suitcase ready to go so that we'd always have it because we were traveling so much. Extra diapers, way more than you think you're going to need, turned out to be a lifesaver for us, as well as a change of clothes, both for the kids for when accidents happen on the plane and for you, because the accidents are probably going to happen on you. And it did happen to me twice. And one thing that we also had, we already had TSA pre-check before we started the program. And I can't imagine going through this with kids without it. If you're not familiar with it, it's a program where you do an interview and then you get a known traveler number that kind of clears you through security. So you go through a different security line at the airport and you don't have to take off your shoes. You don't have to take your stuff out of your bags. You don't have to take out your liquids. And when you're traveling with so much stuff and small kids, it just saved us so much time and frustration being able to go through those lines.
One more thing I wanted to mention that we forgot to mention in the beginning is that we did link a lot of these items here, and you can't access the links during the slideshow, but ISA2 will send out emails with the link to all the slides, and then you'll be able to get those links so you can see exactly the products that we're talking about. And also feel free to ask any questions in the chat. We forgot to mention that in the beginning. And we will get to those after the presentation. So some travel essentials that I used was the airplane phone holder and stand, and you can see it on the picture. That was actually while we were in treatment. It would clip on the tray. It depends on, so we've used those a lot, and a lot of people always comment, like, where did you get those? And even a lot of the flight attendants will ask about them. Sometimes they say you can't have it connected on there during takeoff and landing, and other times they don't say anything. So usually we just don't use them during takeoff and landing anymore, knowing that some will make you take it down. But then once we're up, it's fine. And we put it back on. And also, if the tray table is down, it will also just stand. There's ways you can maneuver it to stand on the tray table. And again, with a teenager, that's all they really need because they just use their phone the whole time. And so we didn't have to pack much of anything else. She would also bring her homework. And so that was something that she would do in the airport or on the plane to back and forth on the way to California. The other things that I always do, food allergies or not, is we always have disinfecting wipes in our backpack that we use on the plane. So as soon as we sit down, I wipe the tray table off, I wipe my seatbelt, I wipe the seat and the back, and you'd be surprised how dirty they are. So we just do that all the time, and we always have, and that's something that's just part of our pattern when we get onto a plane, we wipe everything down. And then the travel cable organizer that is also pictured here, I use all the time, and I bought extra cables and everything, so it is always packed. I have like an external charger in there. I have just any cable that I ever need, and that just stays packed while we're in treatment because, like Carly said, you go back and forth enough times that I don't even pack and unpack it. I just know it's always packed and ready to go that I can grab it and throw it in my backpack for my carry-on. The other thing I bought that was really helpful was a luggage strap, and there is a picture of it. So my backpack doesn't have a fancy sleeve to put over my carry-on suitcase. And it was just really nice that I can just kind of strap it around the center of it, and then I don't have to carry it on my back anymore. So that's something that we found helpful. The lunch bag that I linked here is what we took back and forth for her slit and her gummies. And she still is on slit, although she's still in remission for 2 years, she's still doing slit. And so that lunch bag is still what she travels back and forth to college with. It's what we always use to go on vacations. And what we found works for us is that we make sure that one of our backpacks has enough space, and we'll put that lunch bag in our backpack because you can only have 2 items when you board with Southwest. And then we take it out of our backpack and shove it in the overhead bin in between our 2 suitcases so it stays upright. Knock on wood, we've never had it leak, and that's kind of how we just wedge it in so we know it doesn't fall over during the flight. The other thing that we had problems with was our ice packs. So it was never a problem when we left, but sometimes when we were flying home in California, we would leave our hotel in the morning and we wouldn't fly until like 4:30 or so that night. And so we did get our ice packs taken away a couple times and I was like, there's got to be something better. So this foam ice pack doesn't actually turn to liquid when it's not frozen. So I have traveled with it many times, more places than just back and forth to California. And I've never had a problem with it coming through, even if it wasn't super cold anymore. So that's been a super helpful tip that I passed to a lot of people. And then the travel bottles you'll see too, we kind of keep all that stuff packed and ready to go in between trips so we didn't have to refill any of that. And like I said before, we do carry on only. We don't check any luggage. It just makes it faster for us. And I always have a packing list on my computer that I use for each trip. And so I don't have to think about it. All the information is there every time. I just go through, highlight it when I pack it, and it's done. And it makes it super easy to pack. And I usually make an itinerary with all of our essential information on it, what time our appointments are, what location the appointments are at, what our confirmation numbers are for our flights, our rental car, all that stuff. And I always print that out and bring that with me. And then we do always bring safe foods for travel as well for on the flights for my daughter. Whatever she feels like is kind of what we do. And then we don't usually ever travel with a treatment food for appointments because of the fact that we are there for a short amount of time and we fly right back. But we have traveled for vacations with our treatment food and maintenance foods as well.
For our travel essentials, we used a lot of the same stuff that Carly and Beth mentioned. So I just wanted to note a few other things coming internationally that was important for us. One thing was a travel document organizer, and it would allow you to fit your passport and your keys if you have your car left at the airport, which we did every time, and any letters because we used letters to get to the clinic. So it'd also be a good place to put in there. So anyone coming internationally, if you're coming as a single parent with your child, then you'll need to have a travel letter from the government. So check your government online and see what they say. It's always necessary for when you're going back with your child. And another one is, have a letter from the clinic too. That might also help. That's what we've been using. And then we save all these letters and we also save any receipts that we needed and we put it in that travel organizer. Another thing we used for our son was a mini fold, which Carly mentioned before. There's a link on here. It was great for packing into our carry-on and it was very easy to use, especially in the car rentals. Another one I wanted to mention was the travel letter from the clinic. If you are bringing this nuts and seeds and the medications across the border. So we would use that and we were asked a couple times for it and they always cleared us. Every TSA would clear us. So it's just always nice to have it in handy. And I would just use the same letter every time and just keep it in the organizer for the next trip that I had coming. Another thing that was important is a phone, power bank, and charger. And especially if you are traveling in a car rental and all of a sudden your car won't connect to your phone. So it was very important to have that on us so that we always have our phone at all times available if we needed it. And it also plugs into the wall, which is ideally so that you can charge it overnight and charge any other, like the iPad that the kid would use or something else that you need charging your earphones. Another one for people coming internationally, not from Canada necessarily, but from Europe or from South America, as I know there's some people, and I think even some from Australia, is you would need a worldwide charging plug-in so that it would adapt to the wall in the USA because those aren't very easy to find all of a sudden when you're in a pickle. So it'd be ideally to get that before you head out. So those were the main things that we would find important traveling internationally, other than what was mentioned with the cooler bags to keep the slit and the gummies cool for traveling, especially when you're traveling long distances. Things can heat up, especially when you're leaving Cali in summer.
Another question that I get asked a lot is how do we travel with our treatment foods, especially for people who are treating milk and egg allergies. You'll have to bring your own milk and eggs to the clinic for your challenges. For the gummies that you're going to be returning home with, you don't need to refrigerate them immediately when you get them, but they do need to be refrigerated at home. So we would pack them in our regular carry-on and just made sure we had enough space when we were flying out to California that we could return home from them and then refrigerate and freeze them when we got home. For milks that weren't easily acquired, we would measure them out in individual breast milk storage bags and we would freeze them and travel with them frozen. So usually with the Yeti ice pack in our cooler backpack, by the time we got to our hotel, there was still little ice crystals in them. And they were very, very cold still. The same with yogurts, the hard to find yogurts, we would draw up in capped syringes and travel with them in syringes that were frozen so that they were still very cold by the time that we got to our hotel. For eggs, I would pre-make them at home in the measured amounts they were supposed to be and freeze them in Ziploc bags that I labeled with the milliliters of what they were. And then I, again, would pack them frozen. If I needed to bring uncooked eggs, which did happen once or twice, those I was always able to source locally and I would do Whole Foods pickups or Target pickups in advance just to know that I had those that I'd be able to get. And then for nut, seed, and flour maintenance, if we were staying extra days, I would measure out the days maintenance or dosing, whatever it was, in individual reusable condiment cups. And then I would tape around the lid so that I would be sure that it would stay shut through travel. And I would always pack those in my carry-on. For seafood or fish that we would need for challenges, you could just buy them when you get there at Target or Walmart. Instead of needing flights, you just have to make sure that you have enough time when you land to get to the stores to get those for the clinics. And then as Rebecca was saying earlier, if you are traveling internationally, make sure that you have a letter with you that's allowing you to bring food products into the country.
Thank you. Before I slide, Beth or Rebecca, did you want to add anything to this one?
With the dairy, I've heard of people who have had issues bringing it across, so make sure you have the clinic's letter for that. It could be tricky, and also see if you can find. I personally didn't bring any, but see if you can find someone that has also mentioned they've brought it because it would help to know the tricks on bringing that across. But that is the only one that I've found that could be complicated bringing back into Canada. So definitely you need a letter for that one.
And then, so different programs we've used in the, I guess, when we're traveling to and from the program. For us, we signed up for the rewards programs with Hyatt and Hilton because those were the hotel brands we stayed at the most. We also signed up for Delta Sky Miles for both us and for both of our kids because you can get travel points for them as well. We opened 2 travel credit cards that we use for everything and we pay off each month. And then we use those points to help us pay for travel costs. So we opened a Delta Amex, which we were able to get a ton of free flights with, and a Chase Sapphire Reserve because they partner with Hyatt. And so they have a really good transfer rate with Hyatt. So we would transfer our points to Hyatt and then book rooms at the Hyatt Regency Huntington Beach. And we could still email Chef Manny and he could accommodate our families and keep us on the Food Allergy Institute list, just like anyone who was booking using the code that the clinic has arranged with them. For rental car, I was able to use the Perks program through my employer to get discounts with Alamo. And we also, it's not really a reward program, but we wanted to have travel insurance because we're traveling so much. And we ended up getting an annual plan with Alliance, which was the most affordable way to go. It was for all 4 of us for a whole year, covering pre-existing conditions and with international travel, which we wanted to do, it was $480 total for the whole year, which was much cheaper than if you tried to book it trip by trip or to add it on to like your flights. If you were, like if you book through Delta, you can add on travel insurance for your flight tickets through Delta. It was much cheaper to go through Alliance for an annual plan.
And for me, we mostly use the Southwest Companion Pass. I think I paid for flights our very first time that we went out to California. And ever since then, I haven't paid for a flight in cash. I've always used points. And I do have a family of six. So I have four kids. And I mean, honestly, ever since I started the Companion Pass way back when we started treatment in 2021, we have flown probably twice a year, our whole family of six, and I haven't paid for a flight, and we have many trips coming up. So I put everything on that Southwest card, and that's just what works for us right now. I'm sure at some point we'll change to some other products depending on what our vacation, goals are. But for us to fly back and forth to the clinic, Southwest was just the easiest for us. I didn't have to pay for luggage or anything like that. And for our hotels, I have booked through the Southwest portal. I don't currently use that very often anymore because you can get extra points if you book through them. I had a couple problems with it with some hotels, so I've kind of stopped using the portal, although a lot of people use it and it's fine. It just I don't want to pay more in order to use the portal. And sometimes I find I can find the hotels cheaper if I book directly through those hotels. So I do price shop around a lot for all the things every time we go out there to see what's going to be the most reasonably priced. And we don't always stay in the same hotel chain, but I do have rewards with pretty much every hotel chain because again, I really just pick what's going to be the best price for the time that we're going out there. And Rebecca, go ahead.
Yes, for us, we use the Amex Marriott Bonvoy credit card, which has the hotel rewards program. So we booked Marriott's and then you get a couple nights free stay after a while. And there was no exchange transaction fee. So anything we paid at the clinic, we would use this credit card. But we also use the RBC WestJet credit card to get flights. And then it also has a yearly companion pass. So that one was really good to use in Canada to collect the points for that too. And we would sign up for any rewards for car rentals, like Expedia, you can sign up for theirs. And so you get a discount when you book a car. And then, for frequent hotel uses too, chains. So we would just find whichever one would work best for us. Canada doesn't have as many things available as the US, but we were able to get a hold of some of them that were helpful. Another thing that I didn't put on here, but I mentioned is good is if you get car rental insurance where you are from. So in your city, if you get that, you'd be paying less than if you book it through the car rental company.
And then this is our last slide. It just pretty much is self-explanatory. It just shows you the different other resources that we have through the clinic. The enterprise car rental, like I said, I have used that multiple times. I always price it out to see what is going to be cheaper, and that usually is the cheapest for me almost every time. There is the Ronald McDonald House. I haven't used it, and the other two volunteers haven't used it either, but I do know it is an option for some families to stay at the Ronald McDonald House while they're visiting the location for their appointments. And there is also Miracle Flights. We're not able to use that, so I can't speak from personal experience, but I do know of other families that have used the Miracle Flights to get their flights paid for back and forth for the treatment. So that is something that you can look into, and there's links there to learn more information about it. And also we linked a couple of Facebook groups that may be helpful for the traveling topic that we have today. And then there is the code for the Hyatt Regency Long Beach. And there is also the QR code, which you can find more information on the clinic discounts that they have with partners for hotels. And then our email information is there too. If there's other questions that you have, you can reach out to one of us specifically in the future to get additional questions answered. So, go
I
ahead.
just want to add that the corporate code that's there for the Hyatt Regency Long Beach is also the same one for Hyatt Regency Huntington Beach,
Oh,
which
perfect.
is where Chef Manning works. Just make sure when you're putting it in, when you book your room, that you're putting it under the corporate rate code and not under I think it's discount code is the other option. It'll only work if you put it in the corporate rate code box.
Perfect. Thank you.
And then in the FAI travel guide, in addition to the hotels, there's also corporate codes for the rentals, different areas where you can go for activities after you fly in. So I would definitely take a look at that as well. And I think, Carly, you said it was also in the Travel Tipsters Facebook group. Yeah. And I saw also Morgan put it in the chat too, so there's a direct link in there as well.
Perfect. Thank you. So some of the questions in the chat I've been answering here and there. There are some other questions about the restaurants that are allergy friendly besides Noblebird. So we didn't really use a ton of restaurants when we were there. Again, we weren't there very long, so usually we would find a restaurant, and as long as it didn't have any nuts or things on the menu, we would just talk with them, and we would usually feel comfortable eating there. So I don't know if Carly or Rebecca have other restaurants that they used. Otherwise, it does look like some people are chatting in the chat about some other ideas too, which is great. I did put in there about the Spoken app where you can put that on your phone and you can find restaurants around you that have other people have had success with eating there with food allergies. So that's another resource too.
So we ate a lot at Water Table and Pete's, which are the restaurants at the Hyatt Regency Huntington Beach. You don't actually have to stay at the hotel to eat there. You can go and valet, and then they'll validate your valet parking coupon at the restaurants for 3 hours so that you can eat there without staying there. One of the reasons we liked Anaheim was because we could walk to the Disney hotels and eat at the quick service restaurants at the Disney hotels, and they were very allergy aware. And there's a couple places, and one is called Salt and Straw, and one is called Black Tap Burger that are in the downtown Disneyland area that were also very allergy aware for us too. And then I know in Vista, there wasn't any restaurants that we could eat at when my daughter went, but she was pretty early in the program on our one trip to Vista. But there is a bakery called Starry Lane Bakery that is top 9 free that's really close to the Vista clinic.
We went to Chili's, which we found was safe to use, and Wendy's just for a quick burger to grab something fast. But the one we really enjoyed is a steakhouse. A lot of steakhouse, like South American steakhouses, don't use allergens. So, you get steak and fries, and that my son really enjoyed, and that would be mostly peanut free. And there's a lot of options around Long Beach and Anaheim and Cyprus. There's a lot of, so pretty much any of the steakhouses that were South American and Argentinian or Brazilian were pretty safe for allergens.
And then one of the questions was, where can we find the recordings from the past? Isatu, do you have any updated information about that?
So we have the recordings. We just need to find a place to house them in. So we are thinking of putting them on Tip Connect. So once our developer gets through with that, I will send the link and you all will have all the recordings from our first video up until now.
Great. And then another question is, are there Vista hotel suggestions too, or is this primary for Long Beach? So it is primarily for Long Beach, although thank you to Morgan, she did put some hotels for the Vista Clinic in the chat. So please look at that if you're one of the Vista families. All three of us were out of the Long Beach for the most part. It sounds like Carly went there one time, but so do you guys have anything else to add about the Vista Clinic? Do you have any suggestions for that at all?
We stayed at a Homewood Suites in Vista. I can't remember exactly the name of the city, but it was like a 2-minute drive from Legoland. So hopefully that'll help narrow down where it was. But that one was, it was clean and it was adequate and it had a kitchen, which was what we needed.
And I do think that the FAI travel guide also includes hotels in that area, but also the Los Angeles and surrounding areas as well with their corporate codes.
Great. And I did answer this question, but just in case someone else has the question about the foam ice pack, you will get the link when ISO2 sends out the email with the slides. You will be able to access the links that are in the slides during then. So someone asked a question if TSA PreCheck works if you book through Miracle Flights. And it looks like Carly answered that question. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that.
No, not unless there's more questions about it.
Okay. Let's see. I'm just reading through.
I did have a question that came in by email from
Oh, yeah.
Sue. She was wondering, this isn't more so about coming to California for a tip, but more so traveling abroad. What does your maintenance plan look like for that in terms of traveling with your maintenance food or dosing foods?
So I think all of us can kind of take a turn answering this one. For us, when she was in treatment, we did take at least one family vacation every year. Plus, we went on a cruise while she was in treatment and some other like weekend hotel stays because of her dance competition season that we were away. We always would just bring her maintenance and treatment foods and just figure out in the schedule when we were able to get those to to do every day. And we would bring everything kind of pre-made, chopped for all the nuts she needed, or gummies if she was still doing gummies. And we would just bring it all with us and just treat it like we were at home. On the travel days, we didn't, if it was a longer travel day, we wouldn't do her maintenance or treatment foods just like we would if we were going back and forth to the clinic. But for the most part, we didn't really let it hold us back. And we did travel internationally while she was in treatment and also after treatment when she's been in remission. And she still has maintenance foods. And she still takes those to college and she still does those on a weekly basis and some every other week. But it's something that we didn't really let it hold us back. And I always just say I had to be organized and know what she needed to still do when. And we would plan what we would be doing that day on vacation around us so that we knew that she'd still have time for those maintenance and those treatment foods when we were gone.
See, for us, it was a little bit more difficult because of the allergens my daughter was treating, and specifically dairy and egg are harder to travel with the maintenance doses and the dosing doses. We had hoped to do a Mediterranean cruise during the trip or during TIP, and it just logistically was not possible to get the volume of milk and egg that we needed to Europe for the length of time we wanted to stay and do it. So I think we needed to be a little bit more realistic about where we could travel during the program. And for us, doing TIP was the priority and getting her through it because we wanted her to be done before she started kindergarten. And all that being said, we've done lots of little trips in the US. We were able to do a cruise to the Bahamas that started out of Florida so that when we got to Florida, we could just Instacart what we needed to the hotel, prepare it at the hotel, and then take it with us on the cruise. It was a Disney cruise. They were very accommodating about us bringing all of the foods that we needed for TIP on going through their special diets program. So it hasn't held us back. We've just had to adjust our expectations about where we could go.
For us, we decided not to do any long distance international traveling, especially as a couple of these would affect the dosing if it was like over 24 hours of traveling. So we stayed pretty local and did mostly traveling to the US because it was easier to keep track of all his doses because at one point there was a lot with all the seeds and nuts and peanuts to take care of. So we would prepare the doses and go locally, but if it was long distance traveling, then we just avoided it during treatment. Like Carly said, we prioritized the treatment, the tips, so we just decided to wait until he was done to do more long distance traveling with him.
Great. And Isa did put something in the chat too that the questions can be anything. It doesn't have to just be travel. So that's something to keep in mind. We didn't necessarily say that, but for questions, it can be any questions that you have for us.
And feel free to unmute yourself. Another question that I got was how it is that you were able to talk to the airlines, if you did, to be accommodating of your kids with food allergies.
So on the Delta app, you can actually push that there's a peanut allergy. So we would do that. But honestly, we would just pre-board. They never asked us any questions or had any problems with it. So for us, my husband would pre-board, he would wipe down all the seats, and then I would kind of wait to the end so my kids could get the wiggles out and then be the last ones on the plane. And by the time we got there, he had already wiped all of our seats down and made sure there was nothing, like no food crumbs that were around.
We would just when we got to the gate, we would go and talk to the agent and say that we had a food allergy, ask if we could pre-board so we have time to wipe it down. Or at one point, there were a lot of cats on our flight, and my son has a really bad allergy to them. So we mentioned it if we could get moved to somewhere that would be a bit further from the cats, and they were totally okay with that. So pretty much just go to the gate and ask an agent and tell them about your allergies and any requests. And every time we've had no issues with that.
And for us, we never told the airlines anything about the allergens. Again, kind of like Carly. Again, my daughter is older, so we would both just go on together. We'd wipe everything down. She would really only eat the food that we brought. She would never eat anything that was, one of the snack mixes or anything like that on the plane. She only ate the food that we brought, and while we were flying. So that was something. There is one question in the chat, and then I will get to the one that is on here as well. But someone asked a question about what does remission look like in terms of the dosing, how frequent and how much. So for us, we are in the second year of remission, and right now, most of all of her maintenance foods are every other week that she does. There is 3 foods that she still does every week, and 2 of those were her original anaphylactic foods, and then there's one other one that is still every week. And we were supposed to go back out in February, but with her in college, it's just not going to work. So we're going to wait and go after her semester is over. So it's a little bit longer than a year, but we'll get more blood work and see if that can be decreased still. But that's where we're at for her maintenance. And all the other foods besides those 3 are every other week. Anyone else want to chime in about their remission?
So we're in the down dosing period because my daughter just graduated a month ago. So for the first month after she graduated, she has to do maintenance 3 times a week. She has to do maintenance 1 time a week and dosing 3 times a week. She's only dosing 50 peanuts and 6 ounces of Fairlife milk. Eventually, next week, she'll start doing her peanuts and her milk dosing twice a week, with the rest of her stuff just weekly maintenance. And then the 3rd month after that, everything will just be once a week maintenance for her. It's very manageable. Honestly, the hardest time for us with maintenance was about 1 year into the program. At one point, she had 15 daily foods that she was eating, and keep in mind she was two and a half at that point. So it was really hard. We ended up talking to the clinic about it, and we repeated her blood work just like probably 1 visit early so that we could reduce her maintenance down a little bit earlier. But in terms of like post graduation, it's very, very manageable.
We are 2 years in remission, so his maintenance has dropped a lot. He has a lot of nuts that he doesn't dose anymore, like macadamia and coconut, soy. So those are completely gone. He can eat them if he wants to or not. Most of the time he doesn't bother with them, but he can have it safely. And so the nuts are a lot more manageable. He mostly does every other week. And we have another blood work coming up this year, so we're hoping that stuff will drop off some more. The only thing that he still does is slit, because most of his allergies were based on his environmental allergies. So that's the only one that he does regularly, but everything else has dropped a lot for him.
I believe Sinu had her hand up, or Brunel.
Yes, Brunel has her hand up if you want to go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for your discussion. My question is related to safety during traveling. I do travel with 3 young boys. My son is a patient, and he's 7 years old and is allergic to most all foods. Right now, he can safely have elemental formula, and rice. So that travel back and forth to the clinic is my biggest concern. I wanted to know, and I have called ahead to ask to pre-board. I've wiped down all of the things. They've made announcements, but I've even had to offer to buy people snacks who tend to still pull out their own snacks. Has anyone on the line or any of the presenters experienced any allergy emergencies while on air, either during your travel to California or to your other travels? And do you have any tips for, I guess, managing some of the worry that I have about that?
For sure. So we have not had any emergencies. Again, for my daughter, with her being older, it was just like everything else, right? She didn't eat anything that we didn't bring with her. And so we were comfortable with the wiping of everything down, and that's kind of what our comfort level was. I don't know if Rebecca or Carly has other ideas or suggestions, again, besides talking to the flight attendants or calling the airlines ahead of time to try to get as much of a buffer as you can.
We had a reaction on one flight. It was an overnight flight, a red eye. That was many hours after the appointment and clinic. We were traveling afterwards. And the clinic a lot gives you like scenario kits and gives like three different scenarios of what you would do if something was happening. And I was mid-flight, so I couldn't call anyone, couldn't talk to a doctor. So that was a little stressful. But I followed the scenario kit and it was actually easy enough to manage because he was far along in his treatment that he ate something in the air on the that the airline provided. So it was actually very easy to take care of. We just gave him the first scenario, which was an antihistamine and pills and some candy. So obviously, we wouldn't have given him something from the plane if it was in the beginning of his treatment when he could have reacted to something. But even talking with the clinic after, we still can't figure out why he had that reaction. It was probably some delay from something, but the clinic does give you a lot of help and scenarios. So hopefully you can avoid something from happening, but if something happening, hopefully you can get help from the clinic for that.
I would just add, I was really worried about traveling with my daughter. She was contact allergic to dairy before she started the program. And one thing about TIP that I really liked was that with the scenario kits, we had like not just Epi and Benadryl, but we had a steroid, we had Pepsid, we had, like Rebecca was saying, we had plans for how much to give so that if she were to have a reaction, in which thankfully for us never happened while we were flying, I felt like we were really prepared in a way that we weren't when we were just being managed by our allergists at home.
Thank you. Another question in the chat was, after graduating, do you avoid the prior allergens when sick? So we do not. To be honest, it does still make me worried, right? But I mean, my daughter is an adult. She's away at college. And even when she was home, it might be like 3 days later that she's like, "Oh yeah, mom, my throat's kind of sore. I think I'm getting sick." And she would have been doing all of her food before then. So we do not avoid any allergens if she's getting sick now that she's in remission. And we have been okay doing that. I don't know if Rebecca or Carly has other experiences.
No, I mean, my daughter's been sick all week. You might hear it in my voice. There's been something going around our house, and she's been eating freely without restriction. I think, like, since we're so new to graduation, if she were to have like, a high fever or something, we probably wouldn't do her dosing on that particular day. We would, push it off to a day that she didn't have a fever. But otherwise, honestly, I have no concerns about her eating the foods that she used to be allergic to anymore.
Alex eats everything freely. The one thing he still has an allergy to that he isn't able to dose through the clinic is honey. So that's the only thing we avoid and look out for. But for everything else, we dose totally, and he eats normally, even outside of maintenance. But when he's sick or he had like dental surgery where he had to remove his molars, his teeth, so we just avoid on those days because his maintenance, he has so much freedom of when he can dose those because he has like the full week to get it in that we just avoid it for the days that he needs to and get back to them. He's had no issues in the 2 years we've had remission. But if he has a high fever, we do stop dosing for those days, but it's never interfere with maintaining his doses that he needs.